this is how we hack the Facebook ad auction and scale the ad accounts for our clients. Now, if you're watching this video, you were probably like I used to be. When you have a winning ad, you would get all excited and you would try and scale it. But whatever strategy you tried, whenever you went to scale your ads, your ROAS would drop through the floor. And I get it. Trying to increase the ad budget 20% every few days, just duplicating the campaign, duplicating the ad set, and then maybe making a small tweak to the targeting to see if that will help you target a different audience within that audience pool. I tried it all, probably like you. And again, whatever I tried, there was just no predictability or consistency in my scaling efforts. But what I realized is that the big problem is that myself back then, and most marketers now, is that they don't truly understand how the Facebook ad auction actually works. But if you do know how the Facebook ad auction works, then you can actually hack it and make sure that your ads get the cheapest placements in the auction and give you more predictability and consistency when you actually scale. Because there's a specific reason why that when you've got a testing budget that is small, your ads perform well. But when you scale them with a bigger budget, it completely flops. And I'm going to explain why in this video. So this is how we hack the Facebook ad auction. So first off, we need to understand what we call the conversion to spend ratio, which essentially means that you need to set your budget big enough that your ad campaign will exit the learning phase and then eventually optimize and scale with consistency. Now, right now, to exit the learning phase, an ad set needs to have 50 conversions within a 7-day period. So depending on what your goal of your campaign is, whether it is leads or purchases, you need 50 of those within a 7-day period for it to exit the learning phase and for it to fully optimize and scale. But you also need to understand how Facebook responds to different levels of budget. For example, you could set a large ad set budget or a large campaign budget, and trust me, Facebook's biggest priority is to spend all of your money. Priority 1, to spend your money. Priority 2 is to get you conversions, which means that you can set a large budget. Facebook will spend all of your money regardless of if you get a conversion or not. Now, this is obviously bad, but if you set a budget that is low, Facebook will try and be efficient with that budget and try and get you the cheapest possible conversions, which is obviously good. But this is where the conflict comes in, because you can set your daily budget as low, and Facebook will try its hardest to find you the cheapest placements to get you the cheapest conversions. But when you set a low budget, realistically, you're not going to get over 50 conversions in a 7-day period, and therefore it's never going to exit the learning phase. And again, if you set your budget too high because you want to make sure you get the 50 conversions, Facebook isn't going to try and find you the cheap placements. Your cost per conversion is going to be too high. And again, you're not going to be able to get the KPIs for you to scale. So this is why we use auction placement hacking to scale our ads. And I know that's a load of friggin' words that you maybe don't understand. So let's make it a bit clearer for you by using an example. So let's say, for example, you are running an ad campaign to a webinar to generate leads. And let's say that the average cost per lead generally that you get for your business and your niche is around $10. So for you to exit the learning phase with that cost per lead, you will need to set a daily budget of $72 because that is going to get you the 50 conversions over a 7-day period. But obviously, this type of budget is way too high when you're just testing out a new campaign. You do not want to start testing your ad set at a $72 a day budget because, like I said, Facebook's biggest priority is to spend that $72. And because you are testing for the first time, it means that the ads and the creative and the copy isn't tested or optimized. It means that it's very likely that Facebook is just going to spend all your money with very little conversions. So this is why with our strategy for our clients, we test small and scale big. So if we are running a webinar campaign for a client, we will generally start the ad set budget, so the testing budget for different copy and creatives, and we'll set it at between $5 to $10 a day, which is obviously a fairly low daily budget for an ad set. But again, it is low enough that Facebook will see this budget, and then it's got some room to work with over the 24 hours because it doesn't need to spend it super quickly. So Facebook will work hard to actually try and find you the cheapest placements in the auction. And that is typically why when you first launch a Facebook ad campaign and you have a low budget, that right out of the gate, the results are pretty good and you'll get some leads. But even though the leads are cheap, realistically, you're not going to get 50 in a 7-day period. So what happens after 4 to 7 days is that the ad set can't exit the learning phase, so it fails to optimize, and what you'll slowly see is that your ad will start to die out. And even though it was getting cheap leads in the beginning at a low budget, even if you don't change the budget of the ad set, after about a week, it will stop getting leads and it will slowly die. And again, this is because it's not able to exit the learning phase. But what you've got to realize, if you're using this strategy, this is totally fine. This is actually the campaign going to plan when you decide to hack the Facebook ad auction. See, we aren't using these initial ads to dramatically scale the account or make a lot of money. It is to test the creatives and the targeting to see what's working. And we typically let these ad sets run for about 7 days, and then we analyze the data. Obviously, if the ad set isn't working after like 2, 3, or 4 days, then you can just turn it off. But if it's getting good data and it is getting some conversions, we typically let it run for around 7 days. And then when you analyze that data, you can launch more testing ad sets, either in the same campaign or a different campaign, basically trying to optimize the creatives and the targeting that you've already tested. But as soon as you see some ad sets that are well within KPI over that initial 7-day period, you can actually start scaling those with predictability. So what you want to do is duplicate the winning ad sets into a new CBO campaign. Now we typically have between 2 to 4 ad sets with one CBO. So for example, if you had 6 winning ad sets, I would create 2 CBO campaigns and just split them evenly between the 2. Now what you want to do is use the average cost per lead of the ad sets that are going into that individual CBO, and use the learning phase equation to calculate the daily budget of the CBO. So what you want to do is take the average cost per lead of the multiple ad sets inside that CBO. You want to times it by 50 and then divide by 7. And that is your daily budget for that CBO. Now, it's important to know that we usually give our CBOs a little bit more room to work with compared to the average cost per lead of the ad set. So for example, if our average cost per lead was $10, like we mentioned before, then the daily budget, according to the equation, should be $72 of the CBO. In this instance, we would probably round it up to $100. Because again, the whole point of this is to make sure that the CBO has a big enough budget that the ad sets get more than 50 conversions in the 7-day period. So the worst thing you could do is set up a CBO, let it run, and realize that the budget was too low and it's not going to exit the learning phase, because that's going to be a huge waste of money. So give yourself a bit of room and round up the answer from the equation to maybe the nearest $100 or $150. But remember, you can't also just make it super safe by giving the CBO a huge budget. So if the equation says that the CBO budget should be $100 and you want to be safe and you make it a $500 a day CBO or $1,000 a day CBO, again, Facebook's going to see that money. They are going to want to spend that money as quickly as possible in a 24-hour period. So therefore, they aren't going to find you the cheapest placements in the auction. So this is what I always say. It is a fine balance of setting the budget large enough that you know 100% that the campaign will exit the learning phase, but low enough that you know that Facebook will try and find you the cheapest placements in the auction. And this is how you can use auction placement hacking to scale with predictability. So now if you try and scale those ad sets that are working in the testing phase, then your ROAS isn't going to drop through the floor if you use the equation that we just talked about. And after we launch our CBOs, we let them run for at least 24 hours, even if the results are bad. We don't turn it off and we don't touch it for 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, we analyze the data and we start to turn off individual ads or individual ad sets within the CBO that clearly aren't going to come within KPI. And the goal here really is to have one or maybe two of the ad sets within the CBO active and running, because this means that Facebook is going to put the entire CBO budget towards that one or two ad sets. And again, the more budget that goes towards an individual ad set, it basically will guarantee that it exits the learning phase. And we just repeat that process time and time again, constantly testing at a low budget. As soon as we find 1, 2, 3, 4 winners, we put them into a new CBO and we let it scale. And it's using this strategy that has allowed us to scale with predictability. And now, most of the time when we scale our ads, ROAS doesn't just drop and we get frustrated and want to throw our MacBook out the window like before, because we understand how the auction works, we know how to hack the auction. And now when we create those CBOs for scale, they usually scale pretty well at a similar cost per conversion as the initial testing ad sets.